the Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Pretoria, Professor Tawana Kupe, Professor Norman Duncan, Vice Principal Academic, members of the University of Pretoria Executive, Professor Christa Janse van Rensburg, Head of Sports Medicine at the University of Pretoria, members of the Faculty Executive, including our school chairs, staff and students, friends of the faculty, and family members of Professor Janse van Rensburg, distinguished guests. I am Tiaan de Jager, Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Pretoria. This evening's inaugural address will be presented by Professor Christa Janse van Rensburg and will focus on sports and exercise medicine, embracing health and wellness in athletes and patients. Please allow me to welcome Professor Norman Duncan, Vice Principal Academic at the University of Pretoria, to introduce Professor Christa Janse van Rensburg. Professor Norman Duncan holds a professorship in psychology and is the Vice Principal Academic at the University of Pretoria. He previously served as the Head of School of Human and Community Development at the University of the Witwatersrand and the Dean of Humanities at UP. His research and publications are primarily in the fields of human development, racism, and community psychology. His current research interests are focused on teaching and learning in higher education. He is a former president of the Psychological Society of South Africa and currently serves on the Council of the Academy of Science of South Africa. Professor Norman Duncan.
The University Executive, members of the University Council and Senate, Professor De Jager, Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences, Deputy Dean Teaching and Learning, Professor Vanessa Steenkamp, Deputy Dean Research and Postgraduate Education, Professor Tivani Mashamba Thompson, and Deputy Dean in Health Sciences of the Deputy Dean responsible for Health Stakeholder Relations, Professor Flavia Senkubuge, other academics from the University of Pretoria, as well as colleagues from other institutions of higher learning, and of course, Professor Christa Janse van Rensburg and Professor Janse van Rensburg's family and friends, online audience, honored guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my signal pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural lecture of Professor Janse van Rensburg of Sports Medicine in the Faculty of Health Sciences. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I remind you that an inaugural lecture represents one of the most important milestones in the careers of academics, as it provides them with the opportunity to inform the university community and academia more broadly about their academic journeys. More specifically, it provides an opportunity for newly appointed or promoted professors to share with us their research to date, as well as the direction in which they hope to steer their research in future. Above all, for us at the University of Pretoria, an inaugural lecture provides the university with an opportunity to showcase and to celebrate the academic achievements of the professor presenting the inaugural lecture. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to introduce Professor Christa Janse van Rensburg to you. Professor Janse van Rensburg is a sports physician and rheumatologist, as well as the head of Section Sports Medicine at the University of Pretoria. She is a member of numerous committees, both national and international, and currently she is the president of the South African Sports Medicine Association. She is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine and a member of the Scientific Committee of the International Olympic Committee World Conference on Prevention of Injury and Illness in Sport. She is also a board member of the Medical Committee of World Netball. Professor Janse van Rensburg has delivered keynote addresses at several conferences and has been invited to lecture for the Royal Society of Medicine. She currently holds a C2 NRF rating and has published more than 100 articles in peer-reviewed journals. She has supervised more than 40 master's and doctoral students to the successful completion of their studies. She is currently supervising some 15 master's and doctoral students, in addition to those that she had supervised to the completion of their studies. Professor Janse van Rensburg's doctoral research demonstrated how exercise benefits patients suffering from rheumatoid arthritis. She has maintained this research interest over the years. She is currently also doing research on the effects of travel on athletes, the epidemiology of injuries, as well as illness in different sporting disciplines, such as trail running and netball. At this time, Professor Janse van Rensburg is also collaborating with international colleagues on the effects of lockdowns and COVID-19 on athlete wellness and performance, as well as the challenges faced by Paralympic tennis players. She also has a research interest in the post-career health of rugby and football players. Professor Janse van Rensburg serves on the editorial board of the British Journal of Sports Medicine and the American Journal of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. She has embraced the new normal by maintaining a strong online presence, contributing to education by writing blogs and participating in webinars and podcasts. In 2020, she co-authored a blog titled, "Should People Wear Face Masks During Exercise?" This was the most downloaded blog on the British Journal of Sports Medicine website at the time. She's an active sports physician and has accompanied various national teams to events such as the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens, the 2002 Commonwealth Games in Manchester, and the 2002 All-Africa Games in Abuja. Professor Janse van Rensburg played national levels netball, completed 10 August cycle tours, and the Comrades Marathon. To date, Professor Janse van Rensburg has trained more than 80 specialist sports physicians. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I now invite Professor Janse van Rensburg to present her inaugural lecture titled Sports and Exercise Medicine, Embracing Health and Wellness in Athletes and Patients. Prof. Janse van Rensburg, we look forward to your presentation.
Good evening. Good evening to everyone, my family and friends, my academic colleagues, and my international colleagues that I've dealt with in the past. I'm excited to share my journey and my discipline with you. I received my associate professorship in 2014 and was then honored in 2019 November to receive a full professorship. To my dean's dismay, I kept on postponing because I wanted a face-to-face meeting, but I guess you have some benefits with online in that one can reach a wider audience. This page is a true summary of who I am. Already in grade 2, I decided to become a medical doctor. Participating and watching sport really important for me. I love dogs, I love the outdoor living, and just being physically active form a big part of my life. I strongly believe that sport participation assists one to learn to persevere and to complete a task. My university netball coach, Anna-Marie Griffiths, who was also a lecturer at the university and fondly known as Griffy, she really went a long way to install those characteristics in each of her players, and it helped me quite a bit in taking my career forward. And then, of course, if you look at the top right of the screen, you will see the TV in the field. So to my husband's dismay, if I go to the field and there's a big sporting event coming, he needs to take the TV along for me to watch that specific event. I come from humble beginnings. My dad worked hard to provide for his wife and 4 daughters. My mum was a housewife that did needlework to contribute to the income. And although both my parents passed on, their support and guidance were profound. Wherever in the presentation you note I am next to someone's picture, I am paying respect to people that passed on. I am the third of 4 girls. My 3 sisters, Magda, Linda, and Tia, now all have beautiful families, and their children are like my own. I'm married to Hans Swart. He's an orthopedic surgeon, and I always jokingly say he's sort of the technician in our household. If we have a patient that needs an operation, I can send that patient on, but he may not be able to make the diagnosis. Hans, I love you. My parents-in-law, they always supported me 100%. And then I have two beautiful boys. Louis, the older one, married to a beautiful young woman, Tarina, and they have two kids, Danelle and little Ebi. And then Neil, the younger one, married to Diana, and they are staying in Cape Town. And they have two dogs, Lucy and Stoffie. And then my extended family, Elena, who allows me to call her grandchildren my own, little Kelly and fondly known Tona, who's also actually Anthony. And these are the very special little people in my life, my grandchildren and my dogs, just for you to also note. And of course, one is nothing without friends and support. And I need to apologize that because of limited space and time, I cannot show pictures of each and everyone that touched my life in a very special way. I would like to start my address with an introduction to the discipline of sport and exercise medicine. Sport is a growing popularity, and the growing number of spectators and participants can testify to that. Participants may suffer injury and illness, but also physical activity may prevent or form part of the management of non-communicable diseases. And these realities opened up the opportunity to grow a new discipline in medicine. It feels appropriate that my address coincides with World Arthritis Day, and in my rheumatology practice, patients are always educated on the importance of physical activity as part of management of their disease. Sport and exercise medicine is a broad-ranging discipline, and it incorporates quite a few things. Firstly, the management of the medical problems of exercising individuals. And this can be at any age and any level of participation. We're not only working with elite athletes. Then we also need to look at the pathophysiology, the biomechanics, and optimization of human performance. And again, not only for the elite athletes, of course, very important for them when they're on their way to, for example, the Olympic Games, but you have a recreational athlete aiming to do very good in the Cape Town Cycle Tour just the past Sunday, and we also need to look after them. Then the use of exercise as a therapeutic modality in treatment and prevention of disease, and of course the promotion of health and the prevention of disease or injury at a population level. To qualify as a sport and exercise medicine physician in South Africa, one has to be a medical doctor with a postgraduate master's degree that one can do currently part-time. And this degree is offered at the universities of Pretoria, Cape Town, Witwatersrand, and Stellenbosch. And until recently, the University of the Free State also presented a similar course. UCT was the first to offer the course in the early 1990s under the well-known Professor Tim Noakes. But University of Pretoria followed suit under the guidance of Drs. Etienne Hugo and Professor Stan Brighton that initiated the course. And I was appointed as the head of the department in 2000. And currently, we have the most graduates in this field of medicine in South Africa. Sport and exercise medicine serves academia as well as the broader community in various ways. And different routes that one can pursue would include a clinical practitioner that's mostly based in the practice, where you can then deal with athletes or you can work with patients that need lifestyle changes. Then, of course, and this is especially popular with the young graduates, you can be a team physician and you can travel with teams to the rugby championship or to the Olympic Games and just enjoy being part of a sports team that even in the downtimes you need to support. Then one can choose to become a clinician researcher, or of course, one can have a combination of any of these. Just to take you on my journey, I need to tell you where I'm coming from academically. So I attended the Simon Becker Primary School, and I then went to Wonderboom High School. I graduated from the University of Pretoria with all my degrees, and I would call that loyalty. I think I should get some benefits for that. But already at undergraduate level, Professor James Kerr Sr., played an immense role in structuring problem solving and evidence-based medicine in my mind. He would later be my supervisor for my PhD, titled Efficacy of an Exercise Program on Functional Capacity, Disease Activity, and Autonomic Function in Patients Suffering from Rheumatoid Arthritis. I had 3 publications coming from my PhD, and all published in international journals. Professor Brighton was my other mentor. When I was still deciding between internal medicine and orthopedics, he invited me into the world of physical medicine, in our world also called rheumatology, and sport and exercise medicine. And he played a huge role in fine-tuning my thought processes and upskilling my clinical skills. As mentioned, sport and exercise medicine only really kicked off in South Africa in the 1990s. And these are the colleagues that walked the talk to establish this discipline in South Africa. And again, I need to apologize that I could not add photos of everyone that formed part of this journey. And I also did not add photos of all the young leaders in this field. But I do know that we have a young and exciting discipline with still many things to come in future. Now, if I can call this my inner circle in the Department of Physical Medicine, where Professor Stan Brighton was the head, we were a close-knit family because we were only 4 registrars at the time. And I want to honor them for what I've learned through working with them. And this trend of family continued into my move to section sports medicine, where in the 20 years I've been involved, we only had small changes in our staff complement. I believe that is why we can work as a well-oiled machine, because we know the strengths and weaknesses of each other and can therefore be loyal to each other. Of course, do not get me wrong, I'm not against renewal, and that is why we welcome other colleagues, research assistants, and extraordinary lecturers in our midst. It is also well accepted that sport and exercise medicine is a multidisciplinary environment, including radiologists, physiotherapists, biokineticists, sports scientists, and of course, if you want to do research, you need the statisticians. In this slide, I'm showing only a few of my colleagues, specifically those working alongside me at the University of Pretoria. Please note, there's no pecking order. I just needed to try and fit the photos of all the great individuals. And it's not possible to show everyone in South Africa or globally that had an impact on me, but I want to thank everyone that did so. Early in my career, I focused to establish our department as one of the leading sport and exercise medicine units for teaching young doctors to become sport and exercise medicine physicians. My international exposure was limited, but I managed to become a fellow of the International Sports Medicine Federation, as well as a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine. And a few people played a huge role in this journey of mine. Firstly, Professors Martin Schwalnus and Wayne Durman introduced me to FIMS, where I became part of the education committee that was led by Professor Angela Smith, pictured on the left. She's an orthopedic surgeon working in America, and she was also a president of the American College of Sports Medicine. To the right of the picture is Professor Walter Frontera, and he welcomed me in the FIMS family, and he also nurtured me to become an associate editor for the American Journal of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. After I received my PhD in 2012, the then Dean of the faculty, Professor Eric Boeg, shared my vision in getting us on the research map, and Professor Martin Schwalnus was appointed in 2015. Martin, in 2016, gave me the opportunity to co-author 2 papers with some highly esteemed colleagues, still the most cited papers in my armamentarium. And following those 2 papers, these 3 gentlemen each played a big part in furthering my development as a researcher. Professor Roald Baar, after accepting me on the panel of the instructors for the annual International Olympic Committee Advanced Team Physician course, advised me to write publications on travel fatigue and jet lag. Professor Lars Ingebritsen, in the middle of the 3 gentlemen, allowed me the opportunity to submit my research as part of one of the special editions of the British Journal of Sports Medicine, which is the journal with the highest impact factor in our environment. And then Professor Karim Khan, through the stringent peer review process at the British Journal of Sports Medicine, learned me to persevere and believe in my work. And then Dr. Nim Pereira invited me to my first real international keynote in 2018. So as you can see, I'm a late bloomer. I was firstly a doctor, then I was a teacher, and now I'm also a researcher. Within the University of Pretoria, we mainly collaborate with the Sport and Exercise Medicine and Lifestyle Institute, well known as SEMLI, and then we also have collaborations with other universities, including Stellenbosch, Cape Town, and Wits. And these are mainly around South African Sports Medicine Association position stands. And we have a journal that runs with SASMA, and this is the South African Journal of Sports Medicine. So the position statements will be published in the South African Journal of Sports Medicine, which is currently acknowledged as a Department of Education subsidized journal. And I believe to grow the discipline, we need to support our local journal. The journal is growing from strength to strength under the editorship of Professor Mike Lambert, with more and more international submissions and publications, especially in the field of rugby. The journal is also currently under review for possible accreditation by the Web of Science, so we are holding thumbs for that. Regarding our international collaboration, I'm excited that we have a few joint PhD degrees. Firstly, with Freya University in the Netherlands, and this one is on trail running. The student is Karel Viljoen, a physiotherapist, and we have the 2 supervisors from Freya University, Professors Willem van Mechelen and Evert Verhagen. And then newly formed joint degrees with the University of Amsterdam, also in the Netherlands. Note that I don't have a specific thing for the Netherlands, it just happened that way, and I'm very glad for my colleagues for allowing that. So going back to the University of Amsterdam, we have 3 new PhDs, firstly in the field of football, where we will be looking at female and male football players, and their after-career management. And then we will also look at after-career management of male rugby players. And my colleagues at the University of Amsterdam, Professors Vincent Gutebaars and Gino Kerkhoffs. And it gives me great pleasure to also tell that Vincent is an extraordinary professor in our department, and he has already published numerous publications with us as an affiliation. Thank you, Vincent. So getting collaborations like this, young people are immediately given an opportunity on the world stage, and it, for me, is just amazing that we are invited to get involved in joint PhD degrees with such esteemed colleagues. other exciting international research collaborations are firstly the Tennis Research Group, and this is under the capable guidance of Professor Babette Plame, who's also an extraordinary professor in our department. Then we have the so-called ECBATA Consortium, and this consortium is looking at the lockdown effect to athletes due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the principal investigators in this instance, Dr. Jad Adrian and Professor Karim Kamari. Then my two babies, travel research and netball, which we hope to have many more publications coming from. And then more recently, from the International Sports Medicine Federation, under the guidance of Professor Janse Pitsalades, he invited people that is in collaborating centers with FIMS, and we had two very topical publications, the one on integrating athletes with disorders of sex development and trans women athletes back into elite competition, and then also the second paper establishing a global standard for wearable devices in sport and exercise medicine. And then last but not least, my long-standing colleague, previously working in Potchefstroom and now pursuing a PhD at Oxford University. And I'm working with him in a Delphi group on hip research in young athletes. And Paul, I wish you well for the outcome of that PhD. Through hard work, we've established ourselves in various areas of research, and the first of these programs are on the different aspects of travel fatigue and jet lag in athletes. And you will recall that I said Professor Barr told me to start to publish. So my first publication was a systematic review on how to manage travel fatigue and jet lag in athletes. And this was published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Subsequent to that, I was invited to write an editorial for the BJSM that we named Practical Tips to Manage Travel Fatigue and Jet Lag in Athletes. And then I think one of my proudest moments when this consensus document was accepted for publication in Sports Medicine. We were 26 authors from all continents. It took approximately 4 years to get this paper to the point where it was accepted. And I think we can learn a lot from this paper. But of course, we can't just stick to systematic reviews and consensus documents. We now need to start with the original research papers too. And just to appetize you on the concepts we need to take into consideration when we do travel research. So on the screen, you will see a sinus graph. The green little dot will be your dim light melatonin onset, and that is usually about 2 hours before you want to sleep. And then the green triangle is your core body temperature minimum, and that is when you sleep at your best. So the current ruler you see will be your time at destination. Now, if we get a traveler, and this traveler is going in a westward direction, crossing 7 time zones, we need to realign our body clock with that of the destination. And if you go westward, you now need to delay your clock. And if you focus your attention on the green little triangle and the dotted line going down, although it seems if the ruler is going forward, please notice that you are actually going back in time. There you can see it's going back so that you align now to have your little triangle lined up with the 4 o'clock of the time at the destination. And if you go west, you need approximately half a day for each time zone that you've crossed. And if we now turn this to eastward travel, then this is the more difficult part. You now need to advance your body clock. And remembering the dim light melatonin onset and the CBT min, you now have the traveler and you need to advance your clock. And again, looking at the green little triangle, although it seems if you're going backward, please look at what's happening to the time. You're actually moving your clock forward from 9 o'clock in the evening to 4 o'clock in the morning In other words, advancing your clock to realign, and that will take approximately 1 day per time zone crossed. Now, the impact of research on the effect that travel has is significant. The most prominent being that, although it's published in sport and exercise medicine journals, it's applicable to all travelers. With this in mind, we can now prepare our sports teams better for them to effectively compete at events like the Olympic Games or the Rugby Championships or the UEFA Championships, any of those big events. And then, of course, we can educate not only our team physicians, but everyone that is traveling with the team to a big event. And then the impact stretches beyond that. Because of the invitations following the publications, we now have different forums where we can educate people. And I'm very proud to, in a fortnight, present at the Royal Society of Medicine on this specific topic. Many aspects still need to be investigated. And one of the big problems in travel research is that most of the evidence are based on laboratory studies. We need field studies. We need real-time studies. We also need practical measurements to objectively measure the core body temperature minimum. At this time, we just have impractical rectal temperatures, which I don't think any athletes would like us to do, and it is so needed to determine the phase of the circadian rhythm for us to be able to do interventions that will mitigate jet lag. Then we also need to still find out if there are differences regarding sex and age, and of course chronotypes, the morning person versus the night owl. Also important and still outstanding, the differences in the direction of travel that I've just shown you. Also the travel time. So the more time zones you cross, the more jet lag you will be. And then, of course, how long do you need to adapt? Like now in Tokyo, the athletes could only go into the village 5 days before, and the people from South Africa crossed 7 time zones. So immediately they have a negative effect compared to people traveling shorter. Then, of course, if in December you now hop on the plane to go to Europe, it's nice and hot in South Africa, and now you arrive in a cold environment in Europe. So the season also still needs to be researched, as well as the arrival time, because light is such an important factor when we work in this area of interventions to mitigate jet lag. You need to arrive at the right time, because if you get light at the wrong time, you will actually shift your clock the wrong way, and you will struggle for longer with symptoms from jet lag. The epidemiology of various sport disciplines is also investigated by Section Sports Medicine, and the first of these on trail running. I've already mentioned that we have a joint PhD degree with Freya University, and that the student is Karel Viljoen. To the right of the slide, you can see Karel being cold in Amsterdam. That was in the November just before COVID started. But he enjoyed it, he learned a lot, and he brought back a lot of knowledge that he's putting back into the current students that we deal with. And I'm proud to say that he already has 3 publications out for his PhD, and a few more that has been submitted and is under review or is still in the pipeline. And in the end, he wants to develop a trail running injury screening instrument to help clinicians to decide which of the runners will be at higher risk to get injury when they go into the mountains running. And we also established a collaboration with that name I can't pronounce, but it is good colleagues at the university in Chile. And Ruben, thank you for the opportunity to allow us to collaborate with you as well. Then we embarked on a journey with netball, and I do love netball, being a player myself, and I'm very happy that the World Netball allowed us now to start to do research at their events. And we published the first paper that happened at a World Champ event of netball. And this event was played in the UK. It was called the Vitality Netball World Cup. And we're very proud of this paper published in the Physician and Sports Medicine. I also had a student that did a master thesis on netball players from Waterkloof High School, and we now have a paper out where we looked at young South African netball players and the subjective sleep problems they had when they travelled to New Zealand for an international competition. Another PhD that we currently are looking after is Audrey Jansen van Rensburg, and this is in collaboration with SEMLI, with Professor Martin Schwellnus as a co-supervisor, and her PhD is in rugby players, where we're looking at illness and what happened in the players when they participated in the Super Rugby tournament. Audrey already has published one paper on respiratory illness in these players, and we're busy submitting the one on gastrointestinal illness, and there's also one on risk markers. She's busy with her final preparation to submit her doctoral thesis, hopefully within the next month or two. Other epidemiological research includes cycling and running, and you can see I'm going back to my roots. All the sports that I enjoyed and still are participating in forms part of my research, and I think that helps to ask the right questions and to understand what you need to look at. And we were very fortunate that with cycling, we had access to the two biggest timed one-day events in the world. We did research at both the Cape Town Cycle Tour as well as the 94.7, and then for running the same, two of the biggest races on the global calendar, the Two Oceans Marathon and the Comrades, we had access to. And that was also with the help of Professor Schwellnus and many of our master students doing their research on these specific projects. Now, why do we do epidemiological research? And before I started with this, I was also wondering, it's also like counting noses. And then I started to understand the field of epidemiology. And now I know that if we do this type of research, it will help us to look after the health and well-being of athletes. And again, not only the elite athletes, also the recreational athletes. It will help us to prepare medical teams traveling with the sporting teams, or even to plan medical needs for big events like the Cape Town Cycle Tour. It will help us to determine the injury and illness profile of the participants of different sports disciplines. And then, of course, if you can anticipate the medical encounters, one can already flag at-risk participants even before the event started. So for the future of epidemiology in our department, we want to try and develop preventative programs to reduce injury and illness in athletes. And with the focus on trail running, we want to determine differences between road and trail runners, as well as male and female trail runners. And then, of course, going back to netball again, we hope to do a lot in this field where there's really a gap in the literature. Now, COVID-19 presented us with outstanding opportunity to investigate various aspects of the disease in the sporting environment. And in 2019, my one colleague, Dr. Lee Pillay, who's a current PhD candidate at the University of Amsterdam, came with the bright idea that we should look at the effect of lockdown on our elite and semi-elite athletes. And this paper was accepted in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, and the citations just grew. It was published in July of last year, and we already have 100 citations on that paper. So you can see that there is a real need for athletes to understand what's happening to them during lockdown. And following that article, Dr. Pereira asked me to interview me on this COVID-19 lockdown effect on the athletes. Then the ECBATA Consortium, and the acronym stands for the effects of confinement on knowledge, beliefs, attitudes, and training in athletes. And one can see from the title that we have almost 12,500 athletes that participated in this research. We are 110 authors. It's amazing. I haven't been author of such a huge group, but it was amazing to work, and I need to congratulate Jad Adrian, the first author, to be able to guide everyone through this. And it's 6 continents, 142 countries that participated. The first article was accepted in Sports Medicine and will be online soon. And then the second paper is ready for submission. And then, of course, with the success of the blog, we needed to do research on mask wearing during physical activity. And this is in collaboration with SEMLI. We're looking forward to get the results out. We are busy with the data analysis. It is quite a cumbersome task, but we're hoping to get there and then be able to tell people about the effects of mask wearing during activity. And of course, if one think of the impact that this type of research has, it is obvious that we can educate athletes regarding the effect of lockdown, not only on their physical activity, also on nutrition and mental health, as well as return to play and performance. And once we get the mask wearing out, we will perhaps be able to get people to sort of understand it's not that bad to wear masks when you are physically active. So for the future, my first thing is I wish that it will all disappear, and I do think that everyone is with me on that page. But we are still struggling specifically with challenges in the team sport setting. We need to look at the impact of COVID on athlete health, the risk of high-intensity exercise, and they are busy at SEMLI with a study called AWARE, where this results will be coming from. And then, of course, also the return to play and recovery time that will be important for athletes. Whenever you deal with an athlete, again, being it elite or recreational, the first question will always be, Doc, when can I go back to training? And this is the challenge that we deal with in our research as well. Of course, as an academic lecturer, I also need to teach, and this happens at different levels. We need to help with undergraduate medical students, and I'm excited that we are now allowed to teach some of our undergraduates about sport and exercise medicine, because in my time we haven't had that exposure, and I do think it is quite important. Then my main focus, the postgraduate student groups, where we train master's and PhD students. And then we also have groups from outside the University of Pretoria. And the IOC diploma course brings some participants here annually for their practical week exposure that we then have at SEMLI. And I was also involved in the development of the diploma for football, the FIFA diploma. And then, of course, I quite enjoy examining students, and I'm happy that I am invited by the following universities, Wits, Stellenbosch, UCT, and Tshwane, to do examination for them on students in my discipline. We also invite international elective students to come and see what we do, and also for us to learn from them. And then I think one of the pinnacles in my academic career was when Professor Karim Khan asked me to write a chapter in the prescribed textbook for our students. And this is the most recent edition of the clinical sports medicine textbook. I also wrote some chapters for return to play in football. And then I was part of a Delphi group that published an article on the syllabus for sport and exercise medicine physicians. And this was published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine just recently. And I need to show you some photos of activity of our postgraduate sport and exercise medicine students. And if you look to the left top of the screen, you will see my students. the ones with the blue shirts are my staff, and then the ones in between are students, and they all came for their final exams. Then you have the practical sessions where we really try and expose our students to understand biomechanics of injury. So we let them work on the scrum machine. We let them play football and tennis and golf. And then we get people for them to examine on and to learn about being a good sports physician. And of course, due to the pandemic, we also had online lectures that we needed to do. And on this slide, I show you my proud postgraduates. We have 100-odd doctors graduated from our program in my tenure at the helm. And then to the bottom of the slide, you have the participants from the IOC diploma course coming out to do their practicals. And to the right bottom of the slide, some of the University of Pretoria students attending the Advanced Team Physician course in Stellenbosch in 2016. The process of getting our subject field acknowledged as a specialty is well underway, and over the next few years, this new program will be rolled out countrywide and put South African sport and exercise medicine physicians on par with colleagues in the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and Australia, where this discipline is already recognized as a specialty. I also believe that we should grow the platform to allow more multidisciplinary education. And there are some exciting ideas around this currently getting attention. For now, I just want to say, watch this space. And without saying, of course, our educational responsibility also lies with the community. Consulting with patients, one needs to educate them on diagnoses, management, and so forth. And more recently, blogs and podcasts started to become easy vehicles to get information out to colleagues, athletes, and patients alike. And of course, we have a huge task to play in educating people regarding all the issues surrounding COVID-19. And under the capable leadership of Professor Vicky Lamberts from the University of Cape Town, I was part of an expert group writing policy briefs for different populations regarding physical activity in the time of a pandemic. And this included children, adolescents, disabled people, as well as school sport. And then, being the president of SASMA, we also need to work on position statements. And last year we published part 1 and part 2 on return to sport. And now we are working on vaccinations in athletes as well as spectator return to stadiums. This leaves me to summarize the role of an academic clinician researcher. That would, of course, be me. So what we need to do is, of course, firstly, we teach, not only at university level, also at conferences and community level. And I'm going to show an example of some practical teaching that we do with our students. Okay, so when you flex your knee and you now extend the knee, here where the condyle is, that is where the friction is, that it's inserting a bit lower down on Gerdy's tubercle. All right. So when I inject the ITB, I prefer to come from the back. You have a bit of a bursa behind the ITB, all right. So this will be around about the area where you do the injection, and I will come from the back like that. And then the second part being research. And I think what's important to understand about research, it's not just about publishing the paper. There's a lot of planning that need to go into that. And on this slide, I'm trying to show you all the different activities that we need to get a paper published. So firstly, you need to plan, then you need to collect data. The data analysis is usually quite a challenge, then the write-up, and only then your research can be presented as a publication or at a conference in an oral or a poster format. And then service. the third pillar of being a sport and exercise medicine physician. And I had the privilege of being part of big and smaller sport events. And for me, the two standout events, the Olympic Games in Athens in 2004 and the FIFA World Cup, where I was the venue medical officer for Loftus during the FIFA World Cup. But of course, that is the glamorous part, although you work quite hard, as you can see on some of the pictures. But a part of the service is consulting with patients, and these patients will include elite athletes, recreational athletes, healthy people wanting to get active, and people with chronic disease that need lifestyle changes as part of management. And I didn't show any pictures of patients due to confidentiality, but it plays a big part of my daily task, and I can tell that I do love working with patients. And then, for your own mental well-being, one needs some fun and intercollegiate social activities. And on this slide, I'm just showing some of the activities that, again, I was privileged to be part of. Some of my colleagues, the second slide, the second picture, to the right top, sitting on the carpet in Turkey, where we had a good time. Doc Markie and myself having fun on our birthdays, to the left of the slide. And then Dr. John Patricia is doing a nice little dance to the right bottom of the picture. And we also had at Semley a Mandela Day challenge where we were all cycling for 66 minutes, and I never knew that a watt bike could take that amount of effort from you. But just fun and games, and that I do think is important at work. Reflecting on my career, the one word that stands out is opportunity. I was offered opportunities that helped me build my career. I hope that I have and will still create opportunity for many up-and-coming sport and exercise medicine clinicians. I strongly believe that one should aim to add value to people you get in contact with, including colleagues, students, and patients. And in agreement with my colleague, Professor Albert van Schoor, one should lead by example through passion and enthusiasm and recognize and celebrate excellence. In other words, be the exclamation mark in team. And then my motto, right from my favorite brand, just do it. And then last but not least, I need to thank these people for believing in me and supporting me, even if the chips are down. And all that remains is to thank my loved ones for always being there. The Faculty of Health Sciences and the University of Pretoria allowing me this opportunity to share my journey with you. Professor Norman Duncan for spending time in a very busy schedule. Thank you, sir. And then Sam and Mane for their unwavering support in all the arrangements. Louis Kluter Productions for the professional way the lecture is screened. Each and everyone that played a role in helping to achieve my dreams and goals, and everyone that listened to my story. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to thank Professor Christa Janse van Rensburg for her insightful inaugural address. Professor Janse van Rensburg address unpacked the role and impact of clinician researchers in sports and exercise medicine. The increased demand for participation in sports events amongst elite and amateur athletes and the incidence of injuries among school children has brought much needed attention to research in sports and exercise medicine by sports physicians. The field of sports medicine has grown in response to the demand for global sports events and the professionalization of sports. That is part of the reason why the Sport, Exercise Medicine and Lifestyle Institute, SEMLI, was established in 2015. This has ensured that experts such as Professor Janse van Rensburg can conduct research that matters pertaining to sports and exercise medicine across various sports codes. Her research during COVID lockdown on the use of masks during exercise, and obviously her expertise on the impact of travel on sports teams, are very relevant and sparked a lot of interest also on social media. Krista, thank you for sharing your journey with us. Finally, allow me to thank Professor Norman Duncan for leading us in today's inaugural. Members of the University of Pretoria Executive for their continued support to the faculty and to SEMLI. The Health Sciences Marketing and Communication Office, the team at Future Africa and Louis Klute Productions, thank you for making this inaugural possible. Distinguished guests, staff, students, audience, thank you for joining us this evening. Stay safe, exercise, and remember to vaccinate. Good night.
Gaudiamus igitur, jubilestrum sumus, Gaudiamus